Hi everyone, I'm Ben from SideFX. India has become a major force in global VFX. Today we'll explore how the industry is evolving, the challenges that come with scale, and how modern workflows are helping studios adapt. Our first question is for Bernie, Hiral, and Shajy. If you had to describe India's position in global VFX today, what would it be?
Everyone will agree to the fact that how we started off this industry many years back and where we are right now, the way things have scaled from just being a extended service arm to managing and working on high-end visual effects, which you have also seen before in the previous presentation. That has brought India to the one of the top numbers in the globe, where we are providing those services to the audience.
So I would say probably India is one of the most important engine to power any of the global VFX industry, right? So you name any major movies or any episodic or commercial, there's a large amount of India contribution which is there, right? So what we've seen throughout these years is the role has been changing. So earlier India was being talked more from a production capacity point of view or a cost optimization point of view, but that role is now changing, I think. There's a lot of enhancement which is happening. There are a lot of technology pipelines which is coming, the creative ability, and the whole production pipeline which is now being done. The most important part is each movie, as you said, there are 28 studios who worked on Kantara in the previous slides, right? And each studio has a different culture, each studio has a different pipeline, each studio has a different methodology to create a frame which altogether becomes a movie. So I think that's a difficult part, and the way the India studios adapt. Yeah, so we have this concept like ho jayega, which means it will be done, right? So I think with that attitude coming in through, we push each of us to go through each of the challenges, and we cross hurdle one by one together and takes us to. I think that's a big advantage for any of the India studio.
India's like VFX industry is growing, and I'll just start with earlier India was mostly like seen as a back end like a production work, but now things are changing faster. Now we are capable of delivering like high quality work, and we are like we can deliver amazing shots, and we can contribute to R&D also, and we are getting master shots, and now like now we can see like the projects that Triple R and Brahmastra, we have seen amazing the output and the technology we have used. So it's really amazing, And one more thing I want to add, whenever a Hollywood film wins an Oscar, so there is a high chance that it was some part of that like post production was done in like India. It can be like Mumbai, Bangalore, or Hyderabad. So yeah, that's all.
Fantastic, thank you. Is the audio okay for everyone as well? You can hear? Yeah? Cool. Okay, so my second question is for Anand and Shajy. What's one thing about the Indian visual effects industry that has improved massively, and one thing that still frustrates you?
Hi everybody, my name's Anand. I come from philmCGI. I'll rewind a bit back to the first question. You never asked me that, but yeah. So for me, I know a lot of colleagues here. We have all worked together sometime in our career. So we go back to how India has evolved, like from 1995 to now. You would call me a dinosaur, of course. I come from that era. We, as Bernie also said, we came from a time of India only being an outsourced destination for service work, assisting the international studios, movies in Hollywood and projects like that, to today where we are. ILM being here and Frame Store being here itself is a testament to where India is in terms of global talent and the amount of work that we do. Right from, we are not talking about rotoscopy, or we are not talking about prep and cleanup work. We are actually talking about creating visuals that enhance storytelling, and we are a part of that. So that is a bigger shift that has happened through the years. What I see today is our domestic cinema is very strong overall in India, and that has actually helped us, in terms of storytelling. So what we are doing here, we are adding the same value in international projects as well. overall. So that's what my perspective here is. The second question of yours?
One thing that has improved massively and one thing that frustrates you.
We have, I think so, we have become very good storytellers. I feel that, VFX, the earlier understanding of VFX that fix it in post, to now, all the studios that are involved from script to the final frame, that understanding has evolved, and that is what the bigger shift is. That is exactly why, I saw the fantastic presentation of Kantara, and the way the whole project is executed, that understanding, taking from script, sitting with the director, sitting with the DOP, sitting with the VFX director, the art director, the production designer, actually executing how to execute challenges, how to execute project, that is really, really, our understanding has improved. The other frustrating part is, of course, the whole, today, you see the scenario, one project is done by multiple studios. That is also the frustrating part as well at times. Because, as a studio, every studio wants to do the best sequences, the best part, for example. But exactly, today's scenario is, when one project, you have 28 studios in Kantara. So that number itself was a big, I never knew that. And I always heard that, you would have 5, 8 studios maximum in a project, but 28 studios, oh my God. So I think that's maybe the frustrating part also, but again, for the VFX director, if he is happy and the director is happy, it's all good.
Maybe a decade before, we were running multiple academies to make sure that we have creative excellence in each of the departments throughout, right? So that is where we started, and then there was a flood of so many global projects coming in each studio delivering at its class, right? So what happened throughout the phase, and fast forward to the current world, there is a creative excellence which is lying in each of the studios. The production management system has evolved quite a lot, because when we do a global production from multiple sides, the time difference, the time zone difference is a big challenge, transferring data is a big challenge, and the whole challenge of what kind of R&D innovations you do, how the collaborations and reviews happen, right? So these were some of the challenges which were there throughout, and over the decade, probably all of us has learned it well, has innovated it well, and we are actually now at the other part of the spectrum, where we could deliver in scale, and we could handle large, complex shows end to end, be it the animation or a visual platform. I think that journey has been very fantastic, and each studio are doing amazing work on that particular thing. I think what needs to be worked upon morely is a little bit of long-term thinking with all the uncertainty which is going in the industries now. And what we generally happens is we overstress ourselves or over-optimize ourselves for short-time deliveries, right? So we actually, most of the time, we forget ourselves investing enough for training, investing in enough for innovations, technology, and doing our original IP. So I would say that is the missing piece. If we do an excellence there, I think that we have a great future ahead.
Fantastic. Okay, speaking of complexity, my next question is for Bernie and Anand. When a project starts to get bigger and more complex, what is usually the first thing to break?
I think this question, I'll give it to the audience. If you can name just two, at least two, what breaks first for any project that you start? A quick guess. Pipeline, okay. The will of the artist. Okay. Yeah, there are many things that break in any project, right? So that's why we are all there. We are there to solve a specific problem, whether it is the show that is being, that is going to get on screen to the audience. The way the project is executed from the beginning till the end, many things break in that. The most important thing that we all try to hold is the pipeline, because we don't want that to break, because then there is no coming back. So I think it's very critical for having that, having the right team at the right time to manage the pipeline, which generally breaks. I'd like to piggyback on the topic which Shajy mentioned, focusing on technology, artistry together is very important in this line of business, because to complement the artist's work, you need to have the right technology, right pipeline and tools to ensure that you are producing those required results. Creative is a very iterative process. That's what is the challenge, and I think to answer the other part, which the earlier question, what is the most frustrating thing? It's the frustrating thing, but at the same time, it's the most enjoyable thing. Because it's so iterative that you try to do many iterations. You want to see how you can make things better in every render or a simulation that you're actually doing, so that you want to get the best pixel on screen. For that, the time that you spend in getting the output is more important, because if the pipeline breaks, you are left nowhere. You cannot move to the next stage from one department to another to reach the final goal of getting the best pixel on screen.
I think so. Bernie covered it all. Means to add to that, the artist will. I think so. A demanding project tests everything. I think so. It's it's a sad part in VFX. The frustrating part, again, I go back, is also that the deadlines, the artist's lives, definitely, you know, we go through a lot of stress. So that is also the frustrating part when you, in VFX, I am not talking about animation. Animation have some wonderful timelines of, 12 months, 18 months, 2 years. So, but in VFX, yes, it's very challenging. As Bernie said, I think the pipeline is the baseline. This business is all about, technology complementing your artistry, right? So, I echo that. And a demanding project really tests that, your infrastructure, your technology, your tools, and finally your artist will, and overall, the culture of the studio, everything goes for a toss. So that's, yes, we go through that every project, because I think so, no project is alike in VFX. Every project comes with its own challenges, some new visuals, because we can't show the audience the same visuals. So we have to design something new. We have to go through new concepts. We will bring something fresh, and that definitely takes a toll.
Thank you. All right, let's. What's up?
I was saying sometimes the breaks are good.
All right, let's talk about artists more. So my question is for Venu and John. When you're training and educating students and professionals today, what's the one thing you see a gap in, or something that most artists lack?
Okay. You're always learners, yeah. Can't stop learning.
Great. So I'll talk about this from two perspectives, because I've stood on both the sides. So I was the head of simulations at MPC before this, and I have trained over 800 people in MPC, and we selected about 200 people for the simulation department. That is one of the world's biggest simulation department that we have built. Okay. When it comes to the gap, at that point when we were interviewing so many people, the first thing what we saw was the lack of foundation. I think in the previous Kantara presentation also they spoke about it. And the second one is the specialized trainings that is not available in India. Okay. So coming to Tathastu, what we are trying to do now is to build that specialized training and make it available for everyone. Okay. So especially with Houdini, that's what we are targeting at. Okay. The second one, I think even Bernie would support me on this one, is that students think that Houdini is very complex, okay? But actually it is not that complex. It's about how you think about it, okay? You need to be very, you need to question everything that you do in Houdini. You need to understand the steps and not memorize things. That's the main thing that you need to learn when you're looking at Houdini from an educational perspective. And the institutes need to not put Houdini as the last page in their course, but need to have a more in-deep training for you guys to really understand it from a logical reasoning perspective, and train you in that format. Yeah. So these are my 2 points. John can add.
Yeah. Can we do the thing for students again? Like raise your hand if you're a student. If you're in the visual effects industry, whether you're young or old or been doing it for 1 year or been doing it for 20, you're a student, period. It changes so rapidly and so fast. The technology changes. You're always going to be learning something. You're always going to be growing your knowledge. And if you're not, if you think, oh, I know it all, I'm good at what I do and I don't need to learn anymore, then you're in trouble. So the first thing is everybody is always a student. Yeah, at least that's the way I always looked at it. But I remember when I was an untraditional student, so when I went back to school to learn Houdini, I had been out of academia for probably 15 years and didn't remember anything I learned in my undergrad. So when I knew I was going to learn Houdini, I went to the bookstore and bought those little For Dummies books for algebra and like trigonometry and all these, just to brush up so that I had some idea again of basic math that involved 3D animation, right? Just knowing what a vector was, understanding what dot product was, what cross product was, and that cross applies to anything. It's not just Houdini. You find those terms throughout, of course, all different types of software. So we talk about the fundamentals, and I know there's been several panel members that have talked about, in other panels too, that have talked about the fundamentals being the artistic fundamentals, and that is definitely important, key for sure. But I find so many times if I'm running a training or I'm doing something online with somebody that's either being upskilled or a student, it'll be some of those really fundamental little things. You'll mention like, oh, if you use dot product, you can multiply it by the, and that'll get the, and they'll go, what are you talking about? And I'm like, oh, it's okay. So let's go back and learn what the basic math principles are. So I would say the fundamentals cross-apply not just to the artistic side, but the fundamentals also apply to the technology side. There's underlying principles of like understanding logic structures, like basic scripting. What's an if-then statement and how can I use that, right? Like that cross-applies to software everywhere. But just having those basic fundamentals, I think that's something that I notice a lot that people don't have. I think some of it comes from, oh, there's a node that does this thing that I need, but I have no idea what it's doing. I just know if I lay it down and plug it in, it turns red, and I wanted it red. Yeah, but why did it turn red, right? So understanding a little bit about what's going on behind the scenes technically can also be, in my opinion, one of the key fundamental principles that people need to know alongside the art. So I would say that.
Yeah, and if you look at Houdini, there is no black boxes in Houdini. You can dive in as much as you need and look at how they have built each node, right? So it's not locked. So you need to logically reason every step you're making and try to understand in deep what's going on. So that's the way to learn it, basically.
Cool. All right, let's talk more about constantly evolving tools and workflows. So we'll go with Hiral and then Bernie. Where do modern workflows really start making a difference in production in 2026?
I think the modern workflows primarily cater to the point of iterativeness. Because if I have to go back 10, 15 years and then maybe even now for complex simulations, there used to be days where to get one result, you will start a simulation, you will process it, you will wait for it, and then you will show. And then the time that you have for delivering that particular result is so low that you have to be very precise in terms of getting the result and then show it to the creatives and get an approval. Now, from that time to now, where you have an opportunity to quickly simulate, get some faster results, and then go in a specific direction that is expected, that is the best thing that you can get in these days, because that reduces your time, not just, or it gives you more time to have many iterations. And that is powerful when you have a procedural workflow. Not just procedural workflow, but also the optimized way of managing stuff, that adds value to it. So I'd like to quote again what John mentioned. The fundamentals are so important. Even if you take, for example, if we take a recipe that you're cooking at home, why you're adding specific amount of ingredients to it? Because it's not a random thing that you're doing. You're doing it because you want the specific result, and you've tried and tested that. And that's the same case while you're doing something with Houdini or any other application. You need to know why you're adding that value or the attribute. And then math is basic for all the applications, because anything that we see as a pixel is generated because of there is a calculation that's happening behind. Whether it's shading related, whether it is simulation related, everything is math behind it. And if you are good at your fundamentals, then you can definitely capture all the modern workflows that are evolving these days.
Yeah, like that's the advantage of Houdini. You know, we can create procedural setups, we can run on multiple shots, and We have like ML, GPU solvers as well now. And one more like important pipeline we have is USD. You know, previously we used to exchange data, you know, with the department. It was very tricky, you know. We never know like which attributes we are transferring and groups. But now because of USD, you know, it's very easy to, you know, transfer the data, and we can do QC as well. And you know, I'll just share my experience as well. You know, previously if I'm working on a look dev shot, I used to like render one frame and save it like on local and load it on other softwares to, you know, add background like compositing software. But now inside Houdini we can use FX labs. You know, with just one click we can create FX labs, we can add background, we can add glow, and it's very useful while, you know, like working on look dev. So yes, like modern like VFX workflows are really amazing.
Fantastic. And question for John then, following on that. So Houdini is constantly evolving. How do we work with schools to teach those updated workflows on an ongoing basis?
I think that's just, it's mainly just communication, right? It's like making sure they're in the loop for, so all of our instructors, by the way, are there any instructors in the audience? Well, I'll talk to you anyway, just so you know that you're not here. I think it's keeping instructors in the loop. So when we know like a new feature is coming, all of our instructors are on beta. So they can all play with the stuff as they're building their curriculum. So before they actually start to deploy it to the students, they know what the feature is, they played with the feature. Something might change a little bit between the beta and the actual release, but they have an idea of how to shape that curriculum so that they're actually teaching the most modern workflows that they can. I think that's definitely one piece of it. And then the other piece, like I said, is just simply communication. Like we have schools all over the world, and for us, staying in touch with them on a regular basis and making sure that they know and that they're involved and that they're in the loop so they can actually deploy those skills effectively. I think that's the thing.
All of the people on stage who are in production, you work on different projects. At what point in a project do you generally realize a procedural approach is needed to a problem? And maybe we'll go with Venu first.
So we at the Tathastu studio do some of the projects, and one of the projects that we recently did had a ship that was on an ocean, stormy ocean, right? So there are different departments in a studio, and let's say in this particular example, let's say the model was already ready, and we had to do animation, and we had to do effects and CFX for the sails of the ship, right? So according to you guys, which department would come in first? Like, let's say you have the model. What would be the next department? So that's the traditional way of doing it, okay? And we could have approached it like that, but the problem is that every time the client changes the waves, okay, you will have to keep redoing your animation. And then if you redo the animation, you'll have to redo the interaction with the waves. And you'll have to also redo the CFX. So this is a vicious circle, and it keeps going, right? So instead of approaching it like this, we wanted to set it up completely procedurally, where we went ahead and did the ocean first, right? And then we extracted a curve from the ocean for the animation to be driven for the ship. And then once that animation was set up, then that would go into effects again for the water interactions and for CFX to do the sails of the ship. This way, every time the client would change the waves, make it bigger, smaller, everything will the other departments just need to recache. They don't have to, manually go in there and do anything. This is the power of proceduralism, where everything is dependent on each other. If you change something somewhere, everything will still work, right? Nothing will completely break down. You'll have to do minor tweaks, but still you are saving a lot of time through this. So this is what we followed, and it pretty much saved us half the bits, basically.
In my opinion, it's not specific to one area. I'd like all the departments to be procedurally functioning, because if I have to not talk about any specific project, let's imagine a scenario that you have an environment, it's a forest, and then you have zombies running all over. Now, if I want to build this entirely, traditionally it has to go through a model, specific sculpt, scatter of trees and everything. Now, having the crowd simulation, all these can be done procedurally. And if it is done procedurally, any changes that are required in the terrain, it can be managed again. You are not limited to going back to model and then revisit how it has been created and how you can modify it. In Houdini, you have the power to change it on the fly, and then you can quickly see those results and scatter the vegetation or the trees or the rocks or boulders, anything that you can procedurally scatter it on the terrain and have the crowd also simulated. That gives the power for an artist to make things much more faster than it is expected, than it used to happen, and get the best pixel on screen. See, I come back again and again to that point because we are all working towards getting that best pixel on screen. So how do you achieve it? How faster you achieve it? So this is where the procedural workflow in every department gives that power for the artist to get that on screen.
Yeah, procedural workflows are very powerful. But Anand, Shajy, John, do you think there are any misconceptions about procedural workflows in production?
Means we all know. I think so. Most of the students that here, why do you think you would use Houdini for what? Like, as students, what do you think Houdini is used for by studios? See, the misconception is today's pipelines are. Earlier we used to have linear pipelines. Today it's not. The times have changed. We can't anymore afford linear pipelines because VFX projects happen in matter of months, not years. And this is where procedural helps us. I think so. This is where if you have a parallel pipeline, like a classic question, right? Even Bernie said, we start with modeling. A linear pipeline, I would actually go, texture. I would go to rig. I would kind of, then animation and CFX simulations happening in parallel. But today, if I am able to, start parallel processes in procedural from modeling, after that, I am going in parallel to each and every area. I am talking about CFX, I am talking about simulation, I am talking about, and that saves us a lot of time. I think so that is what the power of Houdini is. In fact, today's world, we use whatever tool possible at our disposal. VFX is animation again, it's kind of very linear oriented, but in VFX, studios use everything. We use Houdini, we use Nuke, we use Maya, we use AI. So we are in the era of hybrid pipelines where we are doing some work also for in terms of the redundant work, or you can say simpler shots, roto, simpler cleanup works again being done in AI. So exactly, we have a tool at our disposal, and the power of Houdini is, right now what we are using as philmCGI, we are right now limited to FX, but exactly as I said, we plan to kind of, open a lot of parallel processes.
Could be a misconception that using a procedural workflow reduces the creative thing, and it is more technical. I think this is one of the things which I keep hearing, that it is very technical and it reduces the scope for a creativity. But I do think on reality, if you have a good procedural system in place, which reduces or maybe minimizes or completely removes the entire duplication or a manual effort which has to be done, then that provides a lot of time for the artist to experiment on bettering the shots together, right? I think that's one of the misconception which is there. Imagine if you have to build a city, or imagine you have to build a forest. So manually going and placing each object and then simulating is a massive waste of time, right? So that's where the advantages comes in. And I think the other misconception also could be that procedural is only for FX or only for explosion, right? But now I think that is getting evolved, and we're seeing the procedure workflow starting from assets layout to look dev, layout, crowd, and everything. There's a lot of applications which is there, but you'll have to do it the right way. There is definitely a sense of learning which has to come. There are a lot of changes which has to do from a mindset point of view, and shift from a traditional pipeline to a more modern parallel pipeline. But that's 2 points I think it's there.
And John, any thoughts?
I was just going to say, like, when I first started using Houdini, the misconception was, well, two things. One, Houdini is hard, but we'll get to that in just a minute. We'll get to that one in a minute. But the other one was, like, Houdini has to have a make explosion button, right? Or a make ocean button. Now, there are shelf tools that'll give you little examples of that, but But I thought, oh, this is going to be easy. I'm going to be able to create the best effects in the world with a click of a button, and it's just going to work, right? Because it's procedural, and it's the leading visual effects software in the world, so it's going to be perfect. And then you get in there, and you're like, oh, my Lord. Like, I have got some work to do to make this thing do what I want it to do. So I think that's, like, and that's kind of the flip side. It's almost like saying, I thought Houdini was going to be so easy that you just sort of click a button and you do something. And the flip side is everybody thinks Houdini is really, really hard because it's a procedural, mathematical, you have to know code to be able to use Houdini. And like I said before, I think it's just the fundamentals of the concepts of logic and that type of thing. But you don't have to be a C++ programmer to use Houdini, right? So there's misconceptions on easy and hard, I think, all over the place. But I think we'll get to that in a different question here in a second. So yeah, that's all.
I think so. You just addressed it. I think I was just going to say that you don't have to be a programmer or C++ to kind of use tools like Houdini. It's pretty straightforward. A math logic, if you brush through that, I think so it works.
Wonderful. All right. We're seeing some beautiful work come out of India in Houdini. Anand and Hiral, are you guys able to tell us about any of the work you've done using the new features in Houdini 21 on recent projects?
So, of course, in the audience, everybody has seen Dhurandhar. Theater mein to bahut chala hai bhai. So, we did a lot of work, all the explosions that you see. The good part about, working with director like Aditya Dhar is he believes a lot in doing a lot of live action effects as well. So, complementing the SFX side that also worked on Dhurandhar, we also used Houdini for creating a lot of water simulations. We used Houdini for creating these amazing explosions that you have seen in Dhurandhar. And there is one more project which is kind of close to me because we worked on that project again from script to end. It's a feature film called Jigra, which released a year and a half back. And we created a lot of, a lot of explosions, fire, water. In fact, at times we have, the bullet shots, the after kind of parts of that. So a lot of that stuff was created by us in the recent projects on Houdini.
Hello. Yes. So I have used like latest feature in Houdini 21, which is like I have used neural point surface. So it's a new meshing workflow that we have. So it really works like great for small scale flip simulation. It gives jitter-free mesh, and it's very stable also. And we like rendering, like when we render mesh also, it's very like the output is amazing. And second workflow I have used is MPM fracturing. So now if geometry is Boolean friendly, right? So we can just simulate point data first, and after that, based on that simulation, post sim, we can just fracture the geometry and transfer that data to the geometry. And there are many features I'm still yet to explore, and one of the like much needed node was like geometry light in Solaris. So like that's really like useful for lighting. Thank you.
Fantastic. The machine learning tools are so powerful. But on that note, so Shajy and Venu, if these new workflows are so effective, what's slowing down wider adoption of Houdini?
I would say it's a mindset shift and probably a process and technology shift which is there, right? So everybody is used to an approach to do it. And if you have to change the approach, if you have to change the process, there has to be shift. That is the first thing, right? The thing which goes again with the procedural work front, it does demand a lot of infrastructure requirement. You need expensive high-end configuration machines, and for computing you need a lot of rendering around, right? So I think these are a couple of things. So everything has to tie up together. You'll have to set this thing into your pipeline. You have a defined pipeline, and you have to fit this into your pipeline. And if you're moving from a traditional to a parallel pipeline, you have to fit everything on the pipeline. And how each of the things, the interdependability and compatibility of the applications and the workflows all has to fit in together, right? So that's a change. I think it's just a mindset change. It has to somewhere come up that what's the larger gain or larger benefit we are getting out of it? Are we going to make it quicker, better, efficient, or amazing in a quality point? if that's the thing, what is the trade-off which you have to do to achieve that, right? And what does it require to do that? I think these are 3-4 points which we have to join it together, and we probably will see a successful world there.
Okay, the question was, why are the studios not adopting Houdini so quickly, basically, right? So we at Tathastu are connecting with, we are not just working with one studio. We are selling licenses to pretty much all the studios in India. That's pretty much like over 1,000 studios we are talking about, right? So talking to them, the main problem that we see is lack of specialized artists that they're getting. So that's where we were all talking about the specialized trainings through which we can get these artists. So that's the first problem. Second thing is the cost of Houdini. I think nobody's talking about it, but I'll just bring it up. So for Houdini, for the students, to understand, there's a free version of Houdini. It's called the apprentice version, so you guys should try that out. And then we have there is a version of Houdini that's called the indie license, basically, which is for freelancers. So if you are a student and you know Houdini enough and you want to pick up projects, you can use the indie license, right? Then there is an FX and core licenses, which are for the studios. But what the studios don't really understand is the way that if the students really learn Houdini from a core license perspective, and they come into the studio with not that knowledge, you can actually, as a student or as an artist, you can bring down the cost for the studio. Just that you need to know how to use the core licenses effectively, right? So that's one, that's the right way of bringing down the cost for the studio. As a student, that's what you can do, right? So the third point I would like to mention is a long-term vision from the studio's side. Because to adopt Houdini, we all talked about how it can be adopted, but then to adopt Houdini, the studios need to think in a long term, because many departments can adopt it, but then you need to really take time to R&D and test these things, and that's how this can be brought into your production, basically. So these are the 3 points that I think are important to fill that gap. Yeah.
Thanks, Venu. Okay, so I mean, seeing what I've been seeing over the last 14 months or so working on India and the presentation we just saw on Kantara, I don't think we're actually too far off this next question. But for Bernie, Hiral, and Anand, what needs to happen for India to lead high-end VFX globally?
Planning. When I say planning, it covers a lot of things, because plan to learn the fundamentals, plan to execute the shot or the work that you have, which means investing on the time to R&D something and then trying to figure out what is required for the shot. The constant practice of these things will definitely lead us to the space beyond where we are right now. Because the planning is very critical from any project execution standpoint. Whether it is just a learning material, whether it is just R&Ding, and developing these workflows that we spoke about some time back, and also have a robust pipeline to execute. So I would keep it simple, saying that planning is the most important thing. You have to start from there.
I think so. What has happened is, for VFX, we are entering that pre-stage. Earlier, we used to do everything in post. Today, because we have GPU power, we have real-time technologies, we have procedural technologies, we want to show the director more in pre. Right after the writing stage, we want to do the previs, we want to show him the final visuals, the camera, the whole sequence. And that is, I think, so missing here, the understanding of how effectively we can use VFX for storytelling before even going for shoots. I think that's the extension of what Bernie said, planning. We kind of we have to reach the next level of VFX. We need to kind of have studios involved from script stage. We need to sit with the DOP, with the director, the VFX director, discussing their challenges. Okay, these are the challenging sequences. How do we plan that? What is going to be made in set? What is going to be live? What is going to be CGI? What is going to be extension? Things like that. So that planning is, if that is done, you enter a stage of pre-visualization, what we call, We kind of execute those challenging sequences. If a previs is required, great, you can use, you know, all the tools possible, Houdini as well. And post that you go in a very planned manner to your shoots. You know where exactly, you know, what you have to build, what you have to shoot, what your camera angles are, how the lighting is going to be, and execute that. If your shoot is done well, I think so your post is going to, you know, this goes to all the producers, I think, so they are going to save a lot of money in post. We normally are told, oh, you know, we did this in the shoot, can you kind of fix it? So that fix it attitude kind of needs to change in terms of, you know, how we do VFX here.
You know, from artist perspective, I can, you know, see that VFX industry is, you know, growing and changing every year. And, you know, Houdini is also like coming with like new version, and we get new technology, new workflow. So I feel, you know, so industry level training is, you know, required. And for that, you know, we need like studio and plus institute, you know, they should come together. So currently the workflows we are using at studio, you know, these things should be like taught at institute. And second, I feel that like Indian artists and supervisors, you know, should like be part of the like technical and technical and creative, you know, discussion, so we can come up with you know, better workflow and better ideas.
One word to describe the future of VFX workflows in India.
So I thought about this one, and I'm going to go with talent. I'm going to say I have been so impressed with everything that I have seen coming out of India, with the support that you have for this industry, with the artistry that's coming out of this industry. So that's the like mega positive when it comes to talent. The opportunity when it comes to talent is we need more of it. Like I think the Indian market needs more skilled Houdini artists, more skilled visual effects artists. So I would say, again, I was going to kind of come back to it, but like, don't think Houdini is hard, so I'm not going to do it, because it might be different, but it's not necessarily any harder than learning Blender, than learning Maya, or than learning anything in visual effects. Visual effects is what's hard, right? Houdini is just a tool to deal with some of that hardness, basically. So please take the time, please invest in yourself and get those skills, because those jobs tend to be higher paying jobs. It's also the case, all the studios that I have ever talked to have always said, if anybody in any part of the pipeline is having a problem and they can't solve it, the answer is go talk to the Houdini person. I mean, it could be a shading artist, it could be an animator, it could be anything, and they can't figure something out, and they say, go talk to the Houdini person. Because the way that it makes you think and problem solve is different than other software. So like I said, Houdini's not hard, visual effects is hard, Houdini is just different, and it'll force you to think differently, and that is an investment in yourself, and it'll be worth it in the long run. So excellent talent we already have that's amazing, but growing more talent I think is super important.